Shut up and sit
All right,
down.
we're starting.
Woo!
Welcome to Rose Zed.
Welcome, everyone.
This is fucking great.
Hell yeah.
So I probably shouldn't be cussing, but that's fine. You know?
Fuck it.
That's awesome, man. So we want to talk about some Premier League stuff, and I think it'd be cool to talk about Brighton because we were just talking about him. That what's this guy's name? He just left.
Pascal Gross. So he's been there, I'm not sure how long. Oh, there you go, 7 years. He's been there for 7 years.
Right.
He's their top goal scorer, and he got the opportunity to go back to his boyhood team, Borussia Dortmund.
Wow.
And as much as Brighton wanted to keep him when the Champions League finalist comes along and they're your boyhood team at the same time, you're not really going to say no. And Brighton couldn't really tell them no either. So yeah, it's not good news for Brighton because they'll have to figure out how to replace him. But great news for Dortmund.
I was going to say, and also I feel like Brighton has just they've been really good for the past couple of seasons.
Yeah.
Right, and a lot of their players has been getting picked off. Like Trossard went to Arsenal.
Yep.
Right, like they have some incredible talent there. What's that? The Japanese guy?
Oh, Mitoma.
Dude,
Yeah, he's still
Mitoma
there.
is just incredible.
Yeah.
He literally talks about how he like studied, like how to
Yep.
defend and stuff or pass like players. Is insane.
It won't be long before he's picked up, I'm sure.
Oh, absolutely.
I don't know
without
how
doubt.
old he is, but he blew the league apart last
I'm
season.
thinking he's like around 20, like mid 20s.
Yeah.
right.
About to hit his form, I would
right.
have thought. Yeah.
Absolutely. The guy's
Yeah.
incredible.
So, and then they had Cucurella left. Yeah, they've had all sorts of
Really?
players. Yeah.
Cucurella went to Brighton.
He was at Brighton, then he went to Chelsea.
Oh, he went to.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I see what you're
Yeah.
saying. I thought he moved
Yeah.
to. I'm sorry. I'm not that caught up with the Premier League. Actually, I will say that as a disclaimer. I just
Okay.
recently got back into the Premier League, like in the past, maybe like year and a half. But that being said, I'm still a big fan.
Well, that's what I'm here for because I know way too much about football.
See, no, that's what we
Unfortunately,
want.
it fills up my brain more than anything else.
That's what we want, man. So we want to talk about some transfers. So we got,
Absolutely.
let's see, we got Emile Smith Rowe going to Fulham. What do you think about that?
I think that's a great move for Fulham. I'm
Yeah.
not sure it's a good move for Arsenal because came through the academy, young 20s, loved the, ate and breathed the club, and he's gone to one of your London rivals. I mean, I know it's Fulham, but great move for Fulham.
What do you think? What do you think that happened? Like, what do you like? Do you think it's just like his form was bad, or just too demanding?
Personally, I think it was his injury record.
Yeah.
He's very injury prone.
Right.
And I think that, with Arsenal, if you miss a couple of games, you're out.
Especially
That's
now
it,
with
you know?
Arteta and like the way that they're
Yeah.
pushing for the Premier League and just winning it in general.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I can totally see that. I mean, it is kind of. A lot of people have been saying how sad they are about him moving, right? Because it's like basically they've seen him grown up at the
Yeah.
club, right?
Absolutely.
Which I understand that, but if he's gonna get more playing time and just like overall just more attention to his actual playing style rather than just like your quick moments here and there at Fulham, I think by all means,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Well, it's a bit like, to use another example of going to Fulham, Manchester United, when Andreas Pereira left. He'd been in the academy for so long, broke into the first team, and then went to
Right.
Fulham. And it was like, no,
Did
he's
it
one
feel-
of us,
Yeah.
and he's leaving us. But
Felt
you
like
can't blame him.
it
you
felt
know?
like a breakup.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like,
Exactly.
why are you leaving?
Why are you leaving? Stay, please. But unfortunately, the fans, the fans say one thing, but the club's like, nah, we want to get in some new, fresh blood.
Right.
So,
It looks like Arsenal has actually released some players,
wow.
actually quite a bit of players. Wow.
Arsenal finally got rid of El Neni.
Right, El
He's
Neni-
been there since the dawn of time.
Yeah, seriously. I think wasn't El Neni also didn't he come in through Arsenal?
I think so, yeah.
Right? I think he was
been
one of
there
like
for
the
that
last
long,
like
yeah.
Arsenal players, I believe.
Yeah.
I mean, this is like at least almost 20
Yeah,
players
bloody hell.
released by the club.
Cedric Suarez as well. He was like the next up and coming thing for a while.
Yeah, I was never really a big fan of Cedric,
Fair.
right?
Yeah.
Like he just didn't really.
He never shone.
Yeah.
No, he'd have the occasional good game, but never.
I'm guessing
yeah.
he's one of those players where like in training they do really well.
Yeah.
Right, but then when it comes to actual games, they don't
yeah.
perform.
Yeah.
Which is like apparently like a pretty big thing.
Yeah.
And a lot of clubs will, those scouts will be like, "This is an incredible player." In training, they're great, but they might just have some nerves or something like that, or the pressure might get to them, which is unfortunate.
Yeah. When it's like preseason, you'll have the occasional player where preseason they'll just bang in 7 or 8 goals from right back, and then it comes to the season and they can't do anything.
Right.
They get sent off in the first game, let in 3 goals, and don't score for the next 10 years.
Yeah, and then that sucks too because like a lot of people base like your performance off of those first couple of appearances that you have, and you could be nervous or whatever the case is, and then that happens to just be like what you are remembered for.
Yeah.
Oh, that one guy who was like 18, 20 or whatever.
Yeah.
And now he's like the person seen that is like all these goals or whatever the case is, which is not a good thing, I think. Mourinho's the good example of that. Like you make one mistake in one game, like you're out.
You're
like,
out. Yep.
It's not good, dude. Like thinking back at him in Chelsea when he was there at his first like tenure. I mean, some of the players there, like he gave them like maybe one or two chances, and they just didn't perform. And Mourinho was just like,
well, if you look at that team, they had Mohamed Salah, they had Kevin De Bruyne, they had Lukaku, they had Daniel Sturridge, and all of them were let go.
All of them.
All of them were let go.
Yeah, it's
like, imagine that team if they had been like, there was a game where Chelsea beat Manchester United in the FA Cup, and if you look at that lineup, it's pretty much all of the top talent for the next like 15 years.
Yeah,
and they never performed at Chelsea.
Yeah, you know what, you bring up a really good point. I have noticed too that I'm a big Mourinho fan.
Yeah.
I think he's an incredible manager. I mean, clearly his accolades can speak for themselves.
Yeah.
But I have noticed that he tends to go for more. He doesn't have the patience to build. Like he's not a youngster type of manager.
He'll bring in the old reliable.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He wants to get it done.
Yeah.
I mean, like his Inter is a great example. I mean, you're talking about like the average age was like 30, right?
Yeah.
Which is awesome. Like I mean, like the oldest team to ever win it. I mean, amazing, right? But clearly, he's just not a guy to. It makes me think. This is my ADHD coming. But it makes me think like maybe that's why he has such a hard time in staying in the club for longer than like 3 years.
He has no longevity.
And
I'm going to preface this to anyone who's listening. I keep bringing up Manchester United examples because I am a Manchester United fan.
No, please do.
But Mourinho at Manchester United, he brought in Zlatan.
Yes.
And Zlatan loves Zlatan. He is Zlatan. He is the man.
Right.
But he was about 75 when he came to Manchester United. And, Mourinho, I said when Mourinho came in, he's not going to last more than 3 years. And sure enough, just before the third year, he was out.
I mean...
And I didn't want him to leave. But I knew that his time was
I would love to see what he could do if he actually was just to stay at a club for longer than, say 5 years, right?
Yeah.
Like in 5 years, if he has a youngster that's really good, like what is he capable of bringing out of them?
I think if it was young Mourinho, I think we would be able to see that. And I think the closest 2 times we ever got was what he did with Porto, because it wasn't all, it wasn't the old people's home. And then with Chelsea, because he had young Frank Lampard, young John Terry, young Didier Drogba, young Petr Cech come through.
Right.
But even then, it was 3 years? It was after they lost the Champions League to United.
Yeah.
And he was out. So I think that was the closest we'd ever get.
You know what's interesting? Also, I will point out too that when Zlatan came to Manchester United, Rooney, like he had a couple bad games and another one like just benched.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And it sucked because then he left because he wanted to play.
Yeah.
And of course, he wasn't in the best of form, but I mean, like it's Rooney.
Yeah.
It's like I mean, he's just like oh, man. Speaking of that, I hate when clubs just don't respect like the history. Like here's Mourinho, the guy who talks about football heritage.
Yeah.
Right, and then you have literally football heritage at your club, but you're disrespecting them.
Yeah.
Like kind of like Madrid did with Raul or Guti. Like all these like great players, and they just kind of like let them go.
Perfect current example: Bayern Munich with Thomas Muller.
Yeah,
like he and Germany, not just Bayern Munich. Germany has treated Thomas Muller with the epitome of disrespect.
I mean, absolutely. What
it's awful.
People can get really just dark, man. And it kind of sucks. And I get it, right? Because people want results and stuff, and I understand that. But I mean, there's a time and a place for everybody, and I feel like. If you have a player like that, I mean, we're not managers, right? Obviously, we don't know like what the pressures are of like you need to win, you need to win like this, right? So I understand a little bit of that aspect, but at the same time, it's like you're telling me that a youngster that's 18 is gonna be better than Rooney.
Yeah, come on.
You know what I mean? It's like,
I mean, even if you put that youngster in for 60 minutes and bring Rooney on for 30 when he's got more legs than everyone else,
right?
He's gonna perform. I mean, just look at when he was playing in the MLS, that run back in the 93rd minute. To make that tackle and punt it up the pitch and get the equalising goal. I mean, who else would have done that? I can't think of anyone else. That,
I mean, that's like leader qualities.
Yeah.
You see that, and it's like, why aren't you guys doing that?
Exactly. What about the other 10 players on the pitch? I mean, come on. Like, he's about 72, and he just ran all the way up the pitch, tackled someone perfect onto the head, into the back of the net. And
you know what's funny? It's like, you know how we have like dog years?
Yeah.
We should have that for football players, right? Like, once they get past like 27, it's like dog years come into effect, you know? Like,
absolutely.
That's so funny that you say that. But yeah, you're right. And I feel like that is a very leadership quality. Like, I mean, he's getting paid the most, right? And he's somebody who is, you know, famous. But he's the one like tracking back and really putting in the work and stuff.
When even at Manchester United, you'd see that, especially the post-Fergie years, when he moved more into the central midfield, you'd see it where it was like he was the one that was commanding things.
Right.
And he was the engine. He was non-stop running, all the way 93rd minute, and he was non-stop running. And everyone was like, oh, Rooney's not doing anything, he's not scoring anything, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, because he's playing left-back.
Right.
Because no one else is doing anything.
Yeah. I mean, I understand that, right? Because people think of him as like a striker or like a 9. Yeah. Or sorry, not a 9, a 10.
Yeah.
But yeah, sometimes different managers or different games or different seasons call out for differences of players to do different aspects of the game.
Absolutely.
You know, like
Rooney is a perfect example of that, because when he started off as a 10, but then when it was Rooney, Ronaldo, and Tevez, he played on the right. And then when it was Berbatov, he played behind Berbatov. He was very versatile and did what the team demanded, but it meant that he didn't necessarily get the accolades he should have done.
Speaking of Berbatov, I love Berbatov. He's like
the epitome of cool.
Oh my god,
the coolest man in the world.
Like seriously, man, he's so cool. Like, and you know what's interesting is that he's been like around like he's been doing some like shows and podcasts and stuff here and there. He looks great.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Like he looks amazing. He looks better, I think, now than he did when he was playing with Manchester. You know, like clearly he did something to his hair. Yeah. You know, like and he looks great. He looks even more toned out, I feel like. Yeah. You know, he looks like in great shape. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, like the guy is just man.
And talk about a first touch. I mean, if you wanted someone who could read the game, Dimitar Berbatov had you every time.
Absolutely. Like the guy's did he retire? No, he didn't retire at Manchester United.
No, he went from United. He went to, I can't remember where he went after us. I think it was to the Bundesliga. And then he went to Greece. He went around a little bit.
Okay, so he like shopped around.
Yeah.
Yeah, he wanted to do a Tour de France, a Tour de Europe, you know?
He did a bit like Nani, where Nani ended up in Portugal, America, Australia, popped up in Mexico for a bit. Like, he just did everything.
Wait, he was in Mexico? No shit?
I think so, yeah, for a little bit. He was all over the place, yeah.
That's awesome. So, I did not know that. Yeah. I'm a Mexican, so I should know that.
Come on.
You know, but tracking, I do want to go track back a little bit. I think it's an interesting thing that you were saying about like the Mourinho thing about him at Porto, where he brought in all these players. But the thing I wanted to point out was like, okay, so Mourinho, when he was at Porto, right, before that, he was at like the second division. I forgot what team it was, but he was in the second division of the Portuguese league. And he's the one that found all these just like diamonds in the rough players. Yeah. And he brought them into Porto, like what, less than like 10 million, I think, at that time. Yeah. And he made like a Champions League squad, right? And the reason I want to bring that up is because like Pep, he didn't do that same thing, but he was working with the B team. Yeah. And he brought up like a lot of these like huge names were brought up through the youth system. And I think is a thing to point out that it's interesting that like these are the managers that are very successful, but we're also able to see that talent, but then also like fault themselves in thinking that they need to buy like those top players, instead of looking for those diamonds in the rough like a Conte. Yeah, you know, like I think there needs to be more of that.
Oh, 100%. Well, look at Louis van Gaal. You know, he's laughable with his record at Manchester United, but he brought in Marcus Rashford, right? You know, one of our best players for the last couple of seasons. Yeah. You know, he brought the best out of Chris Smalling. He brought the best out of all these players that became stalwarts even after he left.
Right.
And, you know, he gave all these debuts to all of these players. But when you look back at him, it's like, he's the guy that fell over with his clipboard. You know, like, he's so disrespected at United.
Yeah, I was going to say, he's an incredible manager. He's been managing forever. Yeah. He's like, I mean...
Been everywhere,
like
done
30
everything.
years or something like that. Yeah, he's been everywhere. What do you think happened at United with him?
I think he fell victim to the curse of Manchester United, and that's the Glazers.
Right.
And I think we're seeing that now that they're taking a step back and Ineos is taking control, because, love him dearly, but we finally got rid of Martial, who's been dead weight for the last sort of 4 or 5 years. We're finally getting rid of a couple of other players that have just been subsidiary, that are never going to play. And it's become cutthroat. But then you can also see it with the players that we're bringing in, Xerxes, and then this Euro. And we would never have done that under the Glazers. We would have brought in, dug up David Beckham and put him, in the centre of midfield, because that's what they wanted to do,
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's unfortunate, man. I feel like Van Gaal would have been a great manager to really bring Manchester United's new era.
Yeah.
Specifically when it comes to the young talent.
Yeah.
But he just didn't have the time, nor didn't give him the patience to do it. And again, the Manchester United curse of just all these just bad decisions.
Yeah.
On the club side, and just not enough patience with people. And I don't know. I feel like, especially now, right? You guys just bought Euro, and now he's injured.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate.
The injury curse.
The injury curse.
He's out for 3 months. Hoyland's out for 6 weeks.
6 weeks, yeah.
Rashford's out for an indeterminate amount of time. Anthony's out for an indeterminate amount of time.
Dude.
It's bloody hell.
I mean, I saw a comment on an Instagram post that they were saying somebody had pointed out that their medical staff was not up to par, but I forgot who it was. As in, they were talking about a player specifically. But my thing is is it the medical staff, right? Because Euro was at the club for a couple weeks. What are the medical staff gonna do?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're not gonna it's not like they're injecting him with some weird steroids or some shit like that to make him injured. So I think it's just bad luck, man. Honestly,
if I was a conspiracy theorist, I'd say it was because we were playing Arsenal and Arsenal wants us to sabotage our chances. But in actual fact, it actually leads me on to another thing I wanted to talk about. So the Football Association has agreed to sit down with some of the clubs because they were about to sue the Football Association for the congested calendar. Right. And I think it's the amount of fixtures that these players have to play.
Right.
Because now, if you listen to some of the players like Bruno Fernandes, he said he'd play 24/7, 365 if he could, because he loves football. But as a human being, you can't physically do that. And if you look at the last couple of years, the World Cup has extended because we've expanded teams. The Champions League has expanded teams. You've got the FA Cup that has replays.
Right.
You're playing nearly 100 plus fixtures, whereas you used to play 40, maybe 50.
Yeah, that's a lot.
It's almost doubled.
That's
And the thing that's creating this lawsuit is, have you heard of the Club World Cup next year that they want to do?
Right.
Where they want to do an actual World Cup, but with
clubs,
club teams. That's going to add to the fixture congestion exponentially. And a lot of these teams have ganged together. There's 16 or 17 teams that want to sue the FA and FIFA for even thinking about this, because it's not good for the players.
Yeah, I mean,
because they have no off season.
Yeah, they don't.
Because
they
go straight from the World Cup to preseason.
Yeah.
So
I think that, and also one thing to keep in account is that these teams are set up to win and play for basically just 3 competitions.
Yeah.
If they're going to add another one,
yeah.
You're talking about you basically have to build another team within a club just to be able to rotate and have enough have enough talent for you to really be a Barcelona where you win 6 titles out of the in a calendar year or whatever.
Well, and that's fine for Manchester City, Barcelona, teams like that.
Right.
But how can Girona do that?
Yeah.
Or how is Union Berlin and Stuttgart supposed to do that? How is what's the French team? Is it Rennes that just made it to the Champions League?
Yeah.
How are they supposed to do it? It's like take Leicester when they won the Premier League. Great season. Taking nothing away from them because it's probably the greatest sporting achievement ever. But they were also lucky because they didn't have any injuries. They didn't have any suspensions. And they also didn't have to compete in any of the competitions.
Right.
They got knocked out of the FA Cup in September. They got knocked out of the League Cup by the quarterfinals. They could coast all the way through without.
So they
all
really
the
were
fixtures.
able to focus.
Yeah, And then you look at the next season, they nearly got relegated because they were in the Champions League. They made it far in the FA Cup, and it's complete night and day because they didn't have the depth to expand it.
It's too much.
Yeah.
It's way too much. I think that at some point, either the clubs will have to basically build another squad.
Yeah.
Right? Or they have to just figure out a way to just maximize the games that they do have already.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is, like, I get it, right? Like they want to make more money, but it's like, okay, why don't you guys look at it in a way where you can just maximize the one game that they do have, or the 2 games that you do have in 1 week?
Absolutely.
Like there's no reason why they couldn't do that. That's too much.
And plus, as a fan, you get burnt out because it's like,
yeah,
you've got Premier League on the Saturday. You've got, if you're a United fan, you've got Europa League on the Thursday. Then you've got Premier League again on the Sunday, and then you've got FA Cup on the Wednesday, and then you've got another Premier League game on the Saturday. It like gets to the point where, and then you throw in international friendlies, and it's like, oh, for God's sake, there's more and more football, which is great. But at the same time, it's like the amount of games I missed last season because I was like, oh, I'm not getting up at 4:00 in the morning to watch us play Newport County in the League Cup,
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's a really good point. I didn't think about that. Yeah, there is definitely a burnout. I mean, especially if you're like, for example, me, I'm Mexican and I live in the States. We both live in the States, but I'm saying, obviously, you come from England, so you have one team that you're like, that's my team.
Yeah,
and nobody else really matters, right?
Yep.
But for me, I like Roma from Milan, or sorry, from Italy. I like Milan. I like Juve, right? Like all these teams from Italy just won that one country. In Spain, I like Barcelona.
Yep.
So like, there's just what game am I actually gonna watch on the weekend?
Yeah.
I'm an Arsenal fan from England, so like, of course I'm gonna watch Arsenal because that out of all the clubs, that's my biggest, one that I like the most. So yeah, it's too many fixtures, too many things to keep up with, and that's the reason why a lot of people would talk about how like people just want to watch just highlights.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's a reason right there.
Yeah.
There's too many fucking games.
Yeah.
There's too much shit going on.
Yeah. Well, it's like there's a famous show in England called Match of the Day, and it's been going since like the 60s. And it's literally a highlight show. It just goes through all the games across the weekend. And it used to be because you couldn't broadcast all of the games, so you'd miss it. So you had to watch Match of the Day.
Right.
Now it's because there's so many bloody games, you have no choice because you physically can't keep up with them. And even in the Premier League, they'll have like, so using Greenwich Mean Time, you'll have a noon kickoff, then you'll have like 4 games kickoff at 3 p.m, and then you'll have a game kickoff at 5:30. You physically can't watch all the 6 games at 3 o'clock because there's 6 games.
Yeah.
No one has that many screens
Definitely
to have around their house to watch all of these games. And so I think that's the only way that you can do it is watch it like through highlights on YouTube. So.
And also I think that it definitely, if you add another competition, it like will minimize, what if I think personally it would minimize already, like League Cups are not really seen as anything special.
Yeah.
There's just knockout rounds every time, and people don't really give a shit about them. The only time that people care about them is when you have a treble.
Well, that's what I was going to say. It's funny, you don't care about it until you're in the final.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you care about it.
Yeah, so I think that's an interesting, like, why is that, you think?
Well, I think it's because, especially with the League Cup, say, for example, Arsenal win the FA Cup and Manchester United win the League Cup. United's like, oh, we won the League Cup, and Arsenal's like, yeah, so what? We won the FA Cup. Come and talk to us. As soon as the roles get reversed, Arsenal's like, oh, yes, we won the League Cup. It's great. It's a proper championship.
Right. So it just depends if you're winning or not.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's like I'll never forget when Chelsea won the Europa League, and they were going crazy. You're like, yeah, we won the Champions League. We won the Europa League. We won the Europa League. And Manchester United lost in the Champions League final. Like, yeah, we won a trophy and you didn't. It's like, yeah, it's the Europa League. And then Manchester United went and won it 3 years later against Ajax. We won the Europa League. And,
they were like,
how the turns of tables,
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
sorry, I was just going to say about going back to the players. I think the other reason why there's so many injuries now is because if you look, Wayne Rooney's a perfect example. If you ran into Wayne Rooney, you were going to bounce off because he's big, tough, Scouser from Liverpool, grew up on the streets.
Yeah.
And if you ran into him, you might as well have run into a bulldozer. Like, you're not going to get any quarter. Not to say that players aren't like that now, but they're like racehorses. Like, they are physical specimens that are, brought up to run and sprint and dribble and everything like that. So as soon as something happens, their muscles just twang and they're out,
Yeah, I did see something about that. A lot of people were talking about how before there was more tendency to work on like the physical training aspect rather than like the being fast and the quickness of like football.
Yeah.
So I think it's I mean, here's the thing, right? It's like you would think that with all the technology and all the quote unquote knowledge that we now have, that these physios and doctors would be like, okay, yeah, we need to do more like strength training.
Yeah.
But they don't. So like, what is it? Is it like, are we guessing? Are they guessing? Like, I do think that it is the fixtures. Obviously, it's way too much.
Yeah.
But there has to be something along the lines of like, why are these players getting injured way more? And like, what is that? Like, what's going on?
In my opinion, I think we're reliant too much on technology, because you can put anything into a computer and it'll give you the perfect algorithm, but that's not how the human body works.
Right.
And it's like, you can have a player like Chicharito, like Javier Hernandez.
Yes.
Little, tiny, 5'7",
right.
but will run around everyone. And then you'll have a player like Zlatan.
Everybody.
You'll outjump everyone. And then you've got a player like Zlatan, who's a 10th degree black belt, 6'7", Swedish, killing machine.
Yeah.
And you have to find some balance. You can't have every player like Chicharito, but you can't have every player like Zlatan.
For sure.
And it's a bit like, to use an analogy with basketball. If everyone in basketball is 7'5", then no one's tall because everyone's 7'5".
Mm-hmm.
You have to have some balance, because otherwise it's just going to be a boring watch and no one's going to win anything.
Right.
And so take, for example, Jamie Vardy is a perfect example. He came from the lower leagues.
Mm-hmm.
His pre-match workout was chewing tobacco and Red Bull. But he would go and he would be running around that pitch like there was no tomorrow. And you couldn't stop him because he was this little, firecracker.
Yeah, he really was.
But then he'd go home and have like fish and chips. No conditioning. Not saying that that's how it should be done, but at the same time,
totally,
he was an out-and-out footballer.
Yeah.
And I think that's the trouble, is we rely so much on technology to tell us what to do. And, this graph tells us that we need to work on this, and this graph tells us we need to work on that. We aren't built, as a machine. We are built as a human body, where different people need strength training, different people need agility. And that's also the thing with an 11 team, is you have strengths and weaknesses across the pitch.
Mm-hmm.
This guy's good at dribbling, so you put the guy next to him who's good at passing. You put the guy next to him who's good at shooting. You can't have all 11 players be good at shooting, because then your goalkeeper's rubbish.
Right.
But you can't have your striker be good at goalkeeping, because what's the use in having a goalkeeper up front? You have to have balance.
I understand what you're saying. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I do think that is something to keep in mind, because everything nowadays in training, you see training of anybody, in any preseason, and there's all these, those players are wearing like those, they're like vests, right? And then they track a lot of your oxygen levels and like your blood pressure and your heart rate and so on. And that's all great. I mean, that's awesome. And I think that's definitely something that is, I think that's the reason why more players they're playing longer in terms of their careers.
Yeah.
But then when it comes to youngsters, it's a different thing. And or not youngsters, but just the majority of players, I feel like, are just getting more injured.
Well, I think, and not to get too dark, but I also think that's why we're seeing more instances like Christian Eriksen, where players, or Lockyer from Luton last season, who collapsed in the middle of a game.
Mm-hmm.
We're getting so many players where they're being built up to be this racehorse, but their heart can't take it, and they just collapse. And, you have to build someone up to their strengths. You can't push them. It's like driving a car. If your car can go to 100 miles an hour, it's not going to go to 120. Your engine's going to explode. And it's the same way with a player, with a human being.
That is true. There seems to be like at least one a year that like something like that happens to them.
Absolutely.
And the cool thing is nowadays, like, Christian Eriksen is still playing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I feel like, before, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, that it'd be a different story. Who knows if he would have made it or not.
Well, and that's the perfect example. And if you wouldn't mind Googling for me, because I can't remember what year it was, but Fabrice Muamba, he was a Bolton player. So his last name, Muamba. Yeah, so he played for Bolton. And, his heart stopped for 78 minutes. Wow. And the reason it stopped for so long, I can't remember what year it was. Does it say what year it was when that happened? Because he's only 36. But he had to retire prematurely. I can't remember.
It says 12 years ago, so
Yeah, so 2012?
2010.
2010, yeah.
2010, yeah.
So that was the first one that I remember. And he collapsed on the pitch. I think it was against Tottenham, because I think it was at White Hart Lane. And you just see it. No one reacts because they don't expect it. He just passes out on the halfway line.
Right.
His heart's completely stopped. And because even the paramedics don't know what's going on, there's all this panic. He was the first one I remember. Not the first one where it happened, because I'm sure it happened, before. But since then, it happens at least once, if not twice a year. And that's scary. And I think it is because we're pushing them so far.
Right.
And to be this, well-oiled, well-drilled machine that they obviously are not. And, I think the two managers that could have combated that and did combat that were Alex Ferguson and Arsene Wenger. Mm-hmm. Arsene Wenger was the one that brought in all of the sports science and the nutrition and everything like that, because players were eating, sausages and chips and
just drinking
pasta
beer.
And drinking beer and smoking in the dressing room. And he came in and he was like, "No, we're eating quinoa and we're eating, avocados."
Right.
And you've got Tony Adams and Martin Keown being like, "You fucking what? We're eating what? Are you kidding me?" But then they went on and became invincible and, won the league how many times? And then you've got Alex Ferguson, who knew how to adjust to certain players. So, if he's got Roy Keane, he's going, "Fuck you, you fucking..."
Right.
Shout at him every time. But then if he's got Nani and Chicharito, he's like, "No, it's okay, we'll work on it next time and we'll get there." His man management skills. Not to say that managers aren't like that, but I think that we need to stop relying so much on technology. Technology's great, but only as much as you can use it,
Yeah.
It's like... an example, since we were talking about Football Manager before, there was a guy, and I can't remember what team he went to. It was a League Two team, and they hired him because he basically moneyballed Football Manager, and they brought him in to run their club, and he actually ended up getting into the into the playoff places.
Whoa!
Because of the technology.
Oh, are you talking about the? This was recent.
It's about 10, 15 years ago.
Okay, never mind.
And you're talking about the guy at Nice.
Yes.
Yeah,
he's like German or something like that.
He keeps getting fined because he doesn't
Yeah,
have his licenses.
I thought you were talking about that guy. Yeah.
So there's him as well.
Right.
And he doesn't have his license, and they just kept paying the fine because they made it to the Champions League.
I mean, that's crazy.
So
that's worth the fine.
Yeah, exactly. So, but unfortunately, unlike him, the other guy, the second season it didn't work because his technology failed him, because it could only take him so far, because then his algorithm stopped working, because it could only predict one season at a time. So come the second season, they ended up... I don't think they got relegated, but they were in a relegation battle, and he got the boot. So
I do think that there needs to be more... This needs to be studied more. There needs to be more in tune with what's going on, what are we doing wrong, right? And by we, I mean us as a society and a club.
Yeah.
We're not trying to kill these players literally.
Yeah, exactly.
And have them being, it's it's unfortunate, right? Manchester United makes a great signing like Euro.
Yep.
And everybody's excited about it. And now he's injured, and now the season's gonna be a quarter way through, and nobody's even gonna see what we could do in the Premier League. It's like.
And even if he does come back, or when he does come back, he's not going to be at match fitness straight away.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's such a waste.
It really is, and that's unfortunate. And I think there needs to be more emphasis on, especially their preseason was in the States, right?
Yeah.
And Arteta was talking about how, because they brought Calafiori.
Oh yeah.
And so they didn't play him at all during the preseason here in the States because he had just flown in. And, they were talking about he's just tired and they don't want to push him.
He's been playing in the Euros.
He was playing the Euros, exactly. So I'm like, that's smart.
Yeah. Very smart.
Because you think, preseason, they're not going hard.
Yeah.
But then you watch some of these games and, dude, some of these youngsters are, diving in and, really going for it because they're trying to, prove a point.
Yep.
And they're just for example, I was watching the Real Madrid and...
Is it AC Milan?
Milan, yeah, they were playing. And there's a couple youngsters. There's this one particular... center back who really went in hard on Pulisic, and it looked like he kind of got knocked up somehow in his leg or something like that. And I was like, I get it, right? These kids are trying to prove a point, like I said, but at the same time, it's
Although to be fair, at least that was a centre back on the other team. Did you hear about Rudiger and Endrick?
No, I didn't.
His first training session, Rudiger just completely clattered into him and basically said, "Welcome to Real Madrid. This is how we do things around here," and just completely cleared him out.
Okay, I remember. I know what you're talking about. I mean, good, because he's kind of a arrogant little kid. I think.
Yeah,
You know, he seems like that.
He's like when Neymar left Santos. It's very similar attitude.
Which I get it, right? You know, like he's a young kid.
Yeah.
You know, he just got by Madrid.
Yeah.
Like
you're the best player in your country.
You have an ego.
Yeah.
Right. You're gonna have an ego without a doubt, especially
100%.
at that age. Come on.
100%.
Like your mom spoils you.
Yeah.
And you're a little dickhead, and now a whole country is behind you. You know, like of course you're gonna be a fucking dickhead.
Yeah.
That's without a doubt.
Yeah.
But good. I'm glad that Rudiger was like, I don't give a shit.
Yeah. I've been here for longer than you.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah. Yeah.
Rudiger's German, right?
Yeah.
I always forget I always think that he's like French or something like that. I don't know why, but
Well, I think with Rudiger, and this could be complete bias here because he used to play for Chelsea, but he was so useless for so long that it was almost like I didn't care where he's from.
Right.
Because he never got called up for the national team.
yeah.
It was when Chelsea were rubbish and weren't doing anything. So it was like, why did Real Madrid buy this guy? Of all people, why did you buy this guy?
Yeah.
Because it was the same season they bought Alaba. And it's like, you've got one of the best centre-backs in Europe and Rudiger. Like,
Weird combo,
this guy?
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, weird combo. Sometimes Real Madrid be making some weird like transfers that you're like, why? But then they just figure, what is that, dude? Madrid just figures it out.
Just figure it
It's
out.
weird.
well, here's a perfect example. Have you ever heard of Jonathan Woodgate?
Yeah.
So when he moved from Middlesbrough to Real Madrid, everyone was like,
Right.
what?
Yeah.
Jonathan Woodgate. This
Weird.
is the era of like Lucio's at centre back, Dante's at centre back, Alaba's at centre back, and you bought Jonathan Woodgate. And then have you ever heard what happened on his debut?
No.
He starts, the Bernabeu is like, yeah, we got our new centre back. He scores 2 on goals and gets sent off in 38
No,
minutes
he doesn't.
on his debut.
Oh
It's
my-
one of the worst debuts in history.
And then what?
Yeah.
And then did he keep playing?
I don't think he played for the rest of the season.
Oh my
Except for in like
God,
the Copa
dude.
del Rey. So,
That's incredible.
Yeah.
I've
was a
never heard
waste
of that
of money.
story. I'm glad
Yeah.
you brought that up because I mean, with nowadays there's so much content out there. Like people forget about these little things that happen like
Yeah.
that.
I love
that's-
those little bits of trivia because it's just like, oh my God, how could you do that?
Yeah, that's horrible. I mean,
Yeah.
at least he got paid.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
You know?
100%. He's laughing all the way to the bank.
Speaking of, you
Yeah.
know what's funny is that in Football Manager, you're actually able to fine and take away wages from players if they're not training right.
Oh, nice.
And then I was thinking, like, wait, is that like a thing in real life?
Yeah.
I looked it up, and then it's like, no, because it's illegal.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you can't do that.
Oh, come on.
yeah,
Come on.
you can't do that because it's like I don't know, it's against like I don't know what rule
Fair
or
play
whatever.
or whatever.
But I mean, like maybe they should do that,
I agree.
right? Like
I agree.
it's like, dude, you're not working hard. Like,
Yeah.
what are you doing?
If you're making 150 grand a week and that's before you get all of your sponsorships and everything,
Yeah,
I'm going to fine you a couple of $100 to,
yeah. I mean, like especially like if you have a player that's just like not doing what you want him to do.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a thing if it's like he's training, but like he's not.
Yeah, he's
You
in
know-
a bit of bad form.
Yeah.
He's coming back from an injury, something like that.
Yeah, you understand that.
Yeah.
Or even like if you have like a, what's that guy's name? I feel so bad for him actually. The Tottenham player when Jose was there, he was like really the youngster, English.
Skip? Oliver Skip?
No, not Skip. He was he went to Turkey and out on loan to try to like rebuild his career, and then he just
Dele
flopped.
Alli?
Yes.
Yeah.
Dele Alli, like remember how Jose and like that whole I don't know if you saw the documentary or whatever, but
Yeah.
in some of the episodes they were talking about how like Dele was just like not doing well with the training and stuff. So, but he was still training.
Yeah.
So if that case is where like they're still training, it's like you can't really find them. But if
Yeah.
they're just like flat out just not coming to training,
Yeah.
not showing up on time,
Yeah.
right, like not giving a shit.
Yeah.
Like I understand that aspect of it. Like
Yeah.
okay, we're gonna fine you actual wages because you're not doing the right.
Yeah.
What we're paying you to do.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Unless,
you can't do that.
Unless your name is George Best, because some of the stories you hear about George Best, like, so
Please tell.
he used to. There was one time, so my stepdad's a Burnley fan,
Mm-hmm.
and Manchester United were playing Burnley, and obviously everyone was there to see George Best because he's
He's the guy.
He's the guy.
Yeah.
He was Ronaldo before Ronaldo. Like,
Right.
and so he's not there. He didn't start the game. And everyone's like, what the hell's going on? So he comes on at half time and scores 2 goals in 10 minutes.
Oh, dude, yeah.
Well, what happened was he was in his car having sex with a Playboy model.
No shit.
So he missed kickoff because he forgot what time it was.
That's fucking badass, dude.
Went into the changing room, had sex again.
I mean,
At
dude,
half time, he was like, all right, I'm here. So they
That's-
subbed him on and he scored 2 goals.
I mean, he
So-
scored. He quadruple scored. If
Absolutely,
you think about it, you know? I mean,
absolutely.
wow.
One of my favorite quotes from him was, I spent all my money on booze, fast cars, and women. The rest I wasted.
Dude, that's a great quote. That's a great quote. Dude was living his life.
Oh, 100%.
Wow.
100%.
And this is also during the time where, like, you know, these football players weren't really getting paid that well.
Yeah, he was one of the highest paid footballers, and he was getting like £300 a week,
Yeah.
or something like
I
that. Which
mean-
back then is like 10-15 grand, but still now,
Exactly.
that's what an academy player is making.
Yeah, exactly. That's what
You
I
know?
mean. It's like, dude,
So-
some of these players that are just squad players
Yeah.
are making like stupid money
Yeah.
just to sit on the bench. You know, Man City.
Yeah.
You know,
Absolutely.
like I don't want to point fingers, but Man City.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like.
Calvin Phillips. Just to point out a name.
Yeah. You don't want to point names out, but you know
Yeah.
we want to point a name out.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, it's those old school stories are really cool because like
Yeah.
this is different era, man, different time.
Yeah.
You know, different values and different like
Yeah.
perspectives on how to go about life and stuff.
When even like if we look at what we were talking about with the FA Cup and the League Cup, that's where you get some of that sort of old school nature. Because you know now you look at the Premier League and La Liga and everything, and every pitch is immaculate and every
Yeah.
stadium is immaculate.
Mhm.
And then you go and play against like, well, not Ipswich because they're now in the Premier League, but you go and play against like, I don't know, Oldham Athletic, and it's in the park in the middle of the village, muddy as anything. No
Right.
one's looked after it in the last 50 years. And you get Cristiano Ronaldo playing there.
I mean, that's
Gets
incredible.
stuck in the mud, playing on an uphill slope.
Yeah, that's
That's how it should be, but
Yeah,
you don't
that's
get
awesome.
that anymore.
Yeah.
Like there was, I think it was either Sunderland or Southampton, and they literally built their stadium on a slope. It was only by a couple of inches, but if you put the ball down, the ball started rolling
shit.
down, and they knew where the slope was, so they could go against
No
it.
shit.
Yeah.
dude.
So, yeah.
That's fucking hilarious, man.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Or like Upton Park, West Ham's old stadium. They made it so it was the what's the difference? Shallowest stadium. Like there's a regulation of how thin a ground can be,
Mm-hmm.
and they made it so it was exactly on that length, so that players started running off the pitch because they
Dude.
misjudged it.
By the way, if you're a West Ham fan and you're from the States, do not go and visit where the old stadium was, because I was recently there and that place is not the place to be, man.
It's proper London, that is.
Dude, that is like, I mean, like you're in another world when
Yeah.
you go there, man. I'm glad I went.
Yeah.
I don't think I'll go again.
It's a shame you never got to see a game there because I went to see a couple, and even as an away fan, that atmosphere is incredible.
Oh, I wouldn't doubt it.
That atmosphere is,
I would
is
not-
incredible.
I would not doubt it.
And especially going to watch Portsmouth, because Portsmouth has a pretty good following, and yeah,
It's around the same vibe.
It was pretty like spine tingling
That's
watching
a-
Portsmouth at West Ham.
You know, I'll say the one of the coolest things that I loved about when I was in England is the fact that you can just get on a train.
Yeah.
And you can be almost anywhere.
Yeah.
In like 3 hours, 2 hours.
Yeah.
An hour.
Yeah,
Like you know, like say you live in London or somewhere close around London and you want to go see like a Liverpool game.
Yeah.
You can actually just take a train that day,
couple of hours.
couple hours, you know,
Yeah.
like go have a good time, drink,
Yeah.
come back the same day and just being home
Yeah,
in bed. You know, that's not the thing in here in the States.
if you were following a team in America, I'm just going to take a trip to New York
Oh,
for
yeah.
the next 4 days.
Yeah, there's no way, man. And I mean, you're talking about like the pricing. I mean,
Yeah.
like in England, like it's relatively cheap to travel. Honestly, it really is. And I'm glad that that's the
Absolutely.
case here. Like you got to take a plane.
Yeah.
There's no way you're driving. Like even we're here in the States, right?
Yeah.
In Nevada.
Yeah.
Right. If you were to drive from Nevada to Oregon to go watch Portland Timbers, dude, that's a 16-hour drive. Like, what are
Yeah,
you talking
non-stop.
about? Non-stop. It's just that's insane. So that's one of the things I will say. It makes sense as to why football is such a big thing in countries like all the countries in Europe.
Yeah,
because you're able to actually like, if you follow a club, you can actually go and watch and play in an away game.
Yeah, absolutely,
and be there for them. You know,
because you all get on coaches and like you set off at 8 o'clock in the morning or whatever.
Right.
You know, everyone's chanting and cheering on the bus, and you know, you get to where you're playing, get to the pub,
Absolutely.
and, you know, go for kickoff. It's fantastic.
Absolutely.
You know?
We were actually there. Me and my fiance were there when the Champions League final was happening between Dortmund and Madrid.
Yeah.
Last year, or no, sorry, this year.
This year, yeah.
And just my girl is not like a. She doesn't like football like at all. You know, she's not a sports person. But then she saw like the Dortmund fan chanting like, you know, in the tube.
Yeah.
And she's like, "What's going on?" I'm like, and I had to explain to her what the Champions League final was, and then it was just like the coolest experience. Is just we weren't even in the stadium.
Yeah.
We were just in the tube, like just, you know, like it's like that's like how cool it is, you know, to be like a fan and have fans be chanting these like what I don't even know what they were saying. They were saying German shit,
German, yeah.
you know, and it was scary, but it was like you know, it was cool.
Well, and that's I think there was an interview when the World Cup was in Brazil, and it was NBC or ABC, and you know they were like, "Oh, so how do you feel about soccer?" And the woman's just like, you know, people say that it's like a religion. You know, here in Brazil, it's not a religion. It's much more important. And that's exactly how I feel. It's not a religion. It is much more important, you know.
Dude, I get it, man. Like, there's this, I forgot the YouTube name. It doesn't matter. They make these videos about, like, derbies.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You've seen, like, some of those videos probably.
Wasn't Copa 90 back in the day, was it?
Yes, I think that's what it was. And they have a couple of videos
Had
of,
the
like.
away days.
Yeah, man. It's like, I get it.
Yeah.
Like,
When
I
watching
get it.
some of the most random derbies as well, because they'll go to like Mallorca versus whoever their rivals are, or
and
like
it gets insane.
yeah, it gets absolutely crazy. Yeah, or like they'd go to some of the Champions League ones and they go and watch like Spartak Moscow against Ghent,
Right.
or something
and you're
like that.
What's going on here?
Yeah.
You know, yeah.
But it would be crazy. It would be absolutely crazy.
Yeah, the ones that like were crazy and like actually just scary just looking at them, even like, you know, through the screen, were like the ones in Argentina.
Yeah.
Like the River Plate Boca Juniors shit. Like, dude, that is insane.
Yeah.
Like, just the whole stadium is literally rumbling.
Yeah.
You know, and you can't hear anything. And it's just like,
Yeah.
I felt like I was there, you know, and I wasn't even, I was just like watching it through YouTube on my screen.
The ones that get me are always the either the Eastern European ones. So you got like the Polish, the Serbian, you know, those ones.
Right.
Or
Rowdy.
the African ones.
Do
Like
they think you're crazy?
The Moroccans and like the Tunisians and that.
No
like,
shit.
Let's just say that in like a 60,000 seater stadium, they've got like 150,000 people, and
No
it looks
way.
like it's about to fall apart because they're just rocking.
But it looks awesome, right? It's
Oh,
like
it looks,
they're having a time.
It'd be
They're-
a great atmosphere.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't want to be wearing the wrong colours, that's for sure.
No, dude, that's
Like,
yeah. I get it. I get what they mean by like it's not a religion. It's much more than that. Like because you know you go to church or like if you're a religious person, if you have been to church, there is like an aspect of like serenity or something like that, or like ethereal feelings if you're like in a church and like you know you're doing your thing or whatever. But then you go to a game like that, like you get those feelings and more. You
Well,
know, like and then they score. If your team scores, dude.
Yeah.
You're talking about elation.
Eruption.
Yeah, I mean, just insane.
Well, and that's why it is akin to a religion, because you go to a place of worship, usually on a Sunday,
Right.
to cheer on a like-minded goal,
Yeah.
and you know you're there with like-minded people that believe the same thing as you. You know.
Yeah, and the cool thing is that, well, at least sometimes, is that if your team does lose, you're there for them.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and you're there for the people that are, you know, experiencing the loss.
Collective depression.
Yeah, collective depression, man.
Yeah, like when I was back in England in December, and I went to watch Manchester United beat Chelsea 3-2 or 2-1 or whatever it was. And then I went to watch us lose 3-0 to Bournemouth within the span of 3 or 4 days. So,
like
you know,
you went from the highest high.
peak elation to just absolute depression.
The lowest low,
Like,
dude, yeah.
Yeah.
What a sad
So,
day.
Yeah.
Well,
So-
anyways, Nick, this has been awesome. And sorry for the listeners. I know I was pinging us all over the place. You know, we weren't really structured, but I hope you guys liked some of the things that we were talking about.
That's what happens with having two people that have ADHD.
Exactly.
Bouncing around all over
I
the
mean,
place.
but it's fun, you know. Like this is, you know, we're not trying to be like, you know, a news channel here or anything like that. We just want to like talk about football in general.
Exactly.
You know, and it's weird saying football because it's like I think American football. But I know with you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
I'm not gonna call it soccer, dude. Right?
No.
We actually were thinking about calling the podcast like something about like it's not soccer or something.
Quoting Green Street Hooligans, it's not fucking soccer.
Yeah, I mean, like that would have been awesome. But yeah, hopefully we'll do this again.
Hell yeah.
You know, like literally once a week maybe or something like that would be super cool.
I'm game. Especially once the season starts, then we'll have.
Oh yeah, we'll
a
have
lot of
plenty to
stuff
talk
going
about.
on.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So tune in next week probably.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
All right.
Have a good one, everyone.
Bye.